Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Away from the referendum, the most absorbing political spectacle today was the appearance in front of the Business Select Committee of Mike Ashley, the founder of Sports Direct. The MPs wanted to ask him about his unusually brutal treatment of staff. If you're a minute late, you lose 15 minutes of pay, was one example of his munificence. He, though, had originally declined to meet the committee, disparaging it as a joke, but he changed his mind. Well, our new business editor, Helen Thomas, was watching the resulting encounter.
The tough guy of British retail, arriving for a showdown he had bitterly resisted.
Morning.
His public image, that of a truculent, wealthy boss obsessed with profits over the welfare of his workforce.
Careful.
He could have been defensive. He could have lashed out. Instead, Westminster was surprised by a dose of Mike Ashley candour.
Do you accept that the company was effectively paying workers below the minimum wage?
On that specific point, for that specific bit of time, yes.
This, an admission that the time staff had spent in security checks at Sports Direct's massive Derbyshire warehouse should have been paid. Then there was this mea culpa.
If you were a minute late, you got docked 15 minutes pay. You ask me what I think it's unacceptable. You ask me what I think it's unacceptable. If one of my kids went to work somewhere and they were 2 minutes late, they got fined 15 minutes pay, I wouldn't be very impressed by that. I think that's unreasonable.
He even issued an open invitation to prying MPs.
Could we turn up unannounced at a date that we don't tell you about?
100%, 24/7.
You'd be happy?
Any person's here to do it. But all I want is fairness and balance. Is that fair? And you'll be let in and everything else. I'm telling you, you'll find things wrong. But let's do it then constructively and move forward.
MPs don't want this kind of planned press tour. They're interested in an unvarnished look at Shirebrook. The horror stories of fearful employees working through sickness, of one woman giving birth in the toilet, and of a business overly reliant on 0 hours contracts. That's workers with limited rights and no guarantee of work. But Sports Direct hasn't just been taking flack from trade unions and politicians. Investors have also balked at Mr. Ashley's grip on the company and his unconventional style. Today, for the first time, a hint that there could be change, in the boardroom as well as on the shop floor.
You're somebody that's created an extraordinary company.
I think
you've created a lot of wealth, a lot of it's gone to you.
Yeah.
You've created a lot of wealth, you've done something absolutely remarkable. But do you think your company has outgrown your ability to manage it?
Probably, a long time ago. Some of the things you've said to me today would actually lead me to believe that it's definitely outgrown me.
Mike Ashley didn't want to come to London. Trade unions, politicians, investors, they've all tried to get him to change the way he does business. None have succeeded. But today, he admitted that as the company has grown, Sports Direct has failed its low-paid staff. The irony that it took the kind of media and political circus that Mike Ashley appears to so despise to hold the company to account. Today, Mike Ashley.
Did you find that, Tom?
Tomorrow, BHS bosses will face MPs.
Make space!
Some of the more colourful parts of British business are being dragged, like it or not, into the spotlight.
Helen Thomas reporting there. Well, a lot of people look at Mike Ashley or at recent events at BHS or even low tax-paying multinationals and wonder whether there's some kind of problem with capitalism or capitalists. But you might also ask, where are the authorities in this? Are we a bit soft on antisocial businesses? Man to tell us is Sir David Norgrove, chairman of the Low Pay Commission. That has the job of assessing the minimum wage, not enforcing it. But he was also chairman of the pensions regulator, which governs workplace pensions. That's been a big issue in the BHS case. Very good evening to you, Sir David. I mean, it is interesting that somebody shopped Sports Direct to The Guardian, and they chose not, obviously, to do it to the authorities. Should the authorities be worried that people clearly think it's much better to kind of hit them by going to a newspaper than by reporting them to the responsible authority?
Well, a lot of people are going to. The HMRC enforce the minimum wage, the HM Revenue and Customs, but more people should go to them and complain if they're not getting the amount of money that they think they should be getting.
I mean, I think you guys estimate about 1% of employees are getting below minimum wage.
A bit
something
less
like
than that,
even
but
less
it's
than
very
that.
hard to know.
But what proportion of that is detected? Do you know? I mean, what do you think?
It's impossible to know. I mean, it's like asking how big is the black economy. You can make rough estimates, but it's very difficult to know
Give me a
precisely.
rough estimate, because it's only a couple of hundred cases, 200 or 300 cases that get picked
Oh
up
no,
in a
it's
year.
some thousands of complaints each year that get followed up. I mean, the estimate is roughly about 0.5%, somewhere between 0.5% and 0.75% of employees are paid below the minimum wage.
And how many
But
of the
some of
employers
those-
are detected? I mean, that's my sort of next question, is how many...
Well, several hundred a year are
Right, that's what
fined or have to pay compensation.
Do you think the penalties are big enough?
Well, the penalties have quadrupled over the last few years, so they're a lot higher than they
And
were.
how big are they?
People, you can be fined up to £20,000 per employee. So, for example, one employer we know of was fined £500,000 when a few years ago they would only have had to have paid £5,000. So there has been a big increase, and there's been the introduction, thanks to some recommendations from us, of naming and shaming, which certainly has some effect.
So in this particular case, the Mike Ashley case, I mean, he has reached an agreement with HMRC.
Yeah.
We don't know what that agreement is, by the way. Now, I think it will at some stage be published. Why is that? Why would that not just be public straight away? Why should there be a secret agreement about how we will compensate his staff?
You'd have to ask HMRC that. I don't know.
But don't you find that a bit odd? I mean, it should be open justice. Or do we sit and just sort of negotiate with these people? And I mean,
Well,
you know,
there
he
is-
has done something quite bad.
Yes, yes. I mean, in many cases they are published. Yeah, so the penalties are published, and the company has to account to local newspapers or to television, local television, when it's done something wrong.
And is it good enough that he then pays the money that he should have paid his staff to his staff, and maybe pays some extra, I don't know, and doesn't, for example, do a few nights in jail or have to, you know, do community service for a couple of weeks? I mean,
We would certainly like to see, Low Pay Commission would like to see more prosecutions than there are.
would you?
There's
Because
been
the
very few.
criminal prosecutions, we're talking about 4 or 5.
Yeah, no, they're very, very small number.
And
I
you
mean, I
would
don't
like
want
to
to
see
sound.
more?
We'd like to see more. I don't want to sound wimpish about it, though. But you know, prosecutions are very expensive, time
See, this is, I think, what makes the public so angry.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
the idea that they'll go after a benefit
Yeah.
claimant, a false benefit claimant. Do you think they would treat an employer in the same way as a benefit cheat, someone who goes on and makes a false claim and
I don't know enough about benefit claimants, but I do think we could have more prosecutions of failure to pay the minimum wage.
Is there a sense that, in general, I mean, just standing back from the Minimum Wage Commission, that we're a bit of a soft touch? The pensions regulator obviously was kind of catching up with what was going on at BHS, the fact that a lot of money's been taken out of the company and the pension is in deficit and is now landed on a state, not a state insurance company, but a state-sponsored insurance system. I mean, that...
I do think life is changing a bit. As the world becomes more international, it becomes more legalistic, it becomes a bit more like America, where people play up to the limit of the rules. There's a case, I think, for us being tougher at the margins. We've already seen that in the city with financial regulation. I think we might and probably should start to see that in other areas as well.
That's very interesting reflection. But I mean, in the American case, you mentioned the US,
Yeah.
you would see people being handcuffed and walked out of the office, white-collar criminals,
Yes.
being utterly humiliated, not named and shamed, not fined £40,000 or even £500,000, but I mean absolutely being trashed on television, probably live.
I'm not sure that they would lock up people who fail to pay the minimum wage. I mean, you're comparing apples and pears there. But I think that in America, they have a very different kind of system where it's very legislation, very litigation-based, and not a lot up to that point. They have a kind of nuclear deterrent and nothing that's conventional or tactical before you get there. We tend to have a more graduated approach. Maybe we could use the extreme options more than we do, but there are some advantages in being able to have discretion and make people stick to principles.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just to sum up in a word, you do think we could probably nudge it to being a little tougher on these kinds of things?
I do.
So, David, thank you very much indeed.